Hello, the troopers, and welcome back to General Kenobi's Bunker. Today we got a super duper special episode. Okay, today we get to peel back the curtain just a little bit into one of our favorite hobbies, which is, as you know, toys. But I'm not gonna do this alone. This is, quite the big deal. So we are actually bringing in some reinforcements from our Countdown City Geeks brothers. We have Retro Ray joining us today. How you doing, Ray?
Going on, guys? Get ready for a fun show.
Oh yeah, so Ray was kind enough to actually put us into contact with, first of all, an amazing artist. Okay, a super talented and creative person, but she's even more special in her little niche of geekdom because she has actually worked a lot in properties that you all know and love. Okay, so for the past few years, she's been responsible for some of our favorite figures that we love around here, and not just Star Wars. Okay, guys. So I don't want to spoil too much, but we have the privilege today of talking to an artist, and we're gonna bring her in. Her name is Sarah Lynn Reynolds. How you
Hey,
doing, Sarah?
I'm
Thank you.
great. How are you guys?
Doing good. Thank you
I'm
so much
good.
for joining us here. We really appreciate it. First, we're gonna start off, with a little bit of disclaimer here. So Sarah is she works with Hasbro. She doesn't work necessarily for Hasbro. Straight, she's not directly a Hasbro employee. So let me
Yep.
preface all of this by saying that her opinions, right, are her own and don't necessarily reflect the Hasbro company
Very
opinion.
true.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you
Uh,
for saying that so I didn't have
sure.
to.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
No, no problem, no problem. I got you. So yes, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for
And
having me.
the work that you've done for Hasbro is basically, well, there's nothing basic about it, to be honest with you, but
Thank you.
the description is 3D modeling, right?
hmm
And you have worked in a lot of properties, and we'll get to a few of those. Don't worry. But just to run off the list, you obviously got you work with Star Wars and
hmm
several lines within that. You have worked with Power Rangers,
Yep.
some of the Lightning Collection. You have worked with Marvel. You have worked
hmm
with, I guess, most recently, worked with Dungeons and Dragons,
Yep.
and some other lines, that Hasbro is very
hmm
famous for, such as GI Joe, right? Like more of their own
Yeah.
IP type of stuff. So, guys, what I'm trying to say is that odds are right now in your room, you probably have like three things that Sarah has worked on.
Oh,
There
that's
you
awesome.
go. Thank you, Ray. I got mine back here too,
One of my
but
favorites.
yes,
Yes.
yes, absolutely.
hmm
And so yeah, so lots to talk about. So you went to school for this kind of stuff, right? Not necessarily action figure design, but you
Art
did
school,
go
right? Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
So, yeah, I went to school actually for video game design. So that kind of has a little bit of overlap with actually figures because
Right.
we use similar programs, right? So we use like Maya and mostly ZBrush. So a lot of my training for video game stuff translated really well to that. And I was really fortunate in that Hasbro runs a workshop out of the college I went to, a really cool workshop where they let me submit a portfolio to them, and they, had multiple students from different majors that were able to submit portfolios. And then from that, they selected a group of people. They kind of like taught us how to make sort of like the very, very basics of making an action figure. And so throughout like the semester, we were able to like get feedback from some of the managers, and they, at
Wow.
the end, they picked a couple people that they wanted to bring in house. And I was fortunate, enough to be one of those people. So
Nice.
yeah.
That's incredible. Well, you say fortunate, but I say talented,
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
because that's kind of insane. Okay, so for Hasbro to, even before you graduate, right, like already
hmm
sort of be knocking on your door, that's pretty impressive, right? That's
Yeah, it
that's
was
that
great.
is definitely a good spot to
hmm
be in, right? As a not even a college grad
Definitely.
yet.
Yeah. It was really amazing. Yeah. It was a
Yeah,
great
that's
opportunity.
awesome. So can you tell us what was your first, I guess, official, commission or job for Hasbro?
Hmm. In-house, it's really hard to say exactly what the first one was. I think they kind of start people off kind of slowly. So I did a lot of like Littlest Pet Shop, you know what I mean? Like the
Oh,
cute
cool.
little
Yeah.
animals. I have a couple I have like a display kit like right right off screen. So I have
Awesome.
a couple of my very first ones in there. And I think that probably the most significant like first project, I did a couple weapons for I think Thor Ragnarok at the time was coming out.
Right.
So I did like the hammer for that, and I did the
Cool.
Praetorian Guard whips for like some of their figures because that was like right around I think when like the second
Yes.
like most recent
Yeah.
Star Wars movie was coming out. So those
Last
were
Jedi.
like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, my first like two, like they're small, but those were like the more exciting IPs that I got to work on at first. And then they kind of like ramp you up to bigger figures and bigger stuff
Right.
after that. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So, so you bring that up, right? So you started off with maybe accessories,
Mhm.
weapons, smaller stuff like that, and I'm assuming, right, they like your work, and so they bumped you up to, I don't know how to say it, but a full, I
Right.
guess,
Yeah,
full
exactly.
body
Mhm.
design,
Yeah.
for a figure, which is kind of crazy. And so I wanted to get a little bit into the technical here because obviously, we're very curious. We as consumers and as collectors, we tend to obviously take apart, a
Sure.
figure as maybe more than we should, right?
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
it's cool. It's cool to look at, the engineering and stuff, so I don't really blame you. I do it too.
Exactly. And then, so my question is actually right now that you mentioned it from the engineering point, how much, of the, let's say, the articulation that goes into a figure
Mhm.
is actually coming from you? Or how much is it just, like a blueprint that you get and you're like, okay, I have to, follow these um, guidelines or rules or, like laws that you cannot break in order to, come up with flexible figure.
I would say so for the most part, I don't decide what articulation goes in, right? Like I'm not like sitting there being like, "Oh, I think this one should have an ab crunch or whatever." Like
Right.
I have to implement it obviously
Sure.
and I have to design it, make sure it works, but usually for the lines they'll have like sort of standardized stuff, right? They'll like want the articulation to be a certain way. Like GI Joe is always like super crazy
Yeah.
over the top articulation.
Right.
And those are really cool to work on because of that. They're also really time consuming, but I don't really have the freedom to be like, oh, I think this would work better. Like you have a
Right.
little bit sometimes,
Okay.
but for articulation, mostly I'm just kind of like told what to do, and I do it.
Got it.
So.
And now, does that vary too much, line from line? Like, let's say, like you just mentioned, Jojo has, a lot of articulation, right?
Mhm.
And then, within sort of the same scale, right? Like within like the 6-inch realm, do you see a lot of variation? You do get to notice that from
Oh
the
yeah,
designs.
totally. Yeah, it's completely different from line to line. Like, like I said, GI Joe is pretty crazy. The Displacer Beast I did was like a pretty unique challenge for articulation there. Because,
Yes.
there's this like 6 legs and I don't do creatures that often, but it was really fun because of that. And I've been doing more creatures lately, so that's more exciting in terms of the articulation because it's like a new thing. I've done like 100 human characters of all different kinds. Like, I mean, like the retro figures are obviously like pretty basically articulated,
Right.
but so yeah, I mean it's cool. It's cool to do anything, honestly. It's more fun to like the articulation at this point is so like I'm so used to doing it, I guess, that
Gotcha.
it's like it's like not the most challenging thing anymore, I guess. Yeah.
I hear what you're
Nice.
saying. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like you said, you start to get a little bit used to it. And guys, I want to share here real quick some of Sarah's work that she actually showcases in her Instagram, and she has a couple, and we'll talk about some other ones. And let me just preface this whole thing by saying that all of these links will be in the description below, so definitely go check her out. She has some amazing stuff, and we won't get to show everything that she does here, but so here, you just spoke about like the retro collection, right? For
Hmm.
Star Wars, we see some Power Rangers, of course. This
Yeah.
figure, I know you've been asked about it, a lot.
Hey,
Okay,
it's one of
but
my favorites too, so I totally
yes,
it's
it
totally cool with
is
me. Yeah,
so
he's awesome.
impressive. I mean, I
Thank
love
you.
him. He's right back there, mine. I don't want to fully geek on yet, but he is there. So this is something about what you were just mentioning, right? Like
Mhm.
some of this type of creature work, very awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
Um, and get out a little bit more out of the usual, right,
Hmm.
out of the comfort zone. And look at that looks amazing.
Thank you.
They are allowing you, right, to broaden a little bit more
Oh
the
yeah.
spectrum or the horizon.
Hmm.
So that is very, very cool. And
Yeah,
once
it's very
again, guys,
exciting.
this, I'm just gonna run through some of your pictures here. You guys more than likely have a lot of the stuff that's actually shown here. I know, just going through this, I have like 7 figures. Can you tell us a little bit about I guess, how to, Hasbro calls you, sends you an email and
Mhm.
say, hey, I have a Power Ranger, I have a GI Joe, I have a Darth Vader that I need done like
Sure.
ASAP, right?
Yeah.
um I'm assuming at some point you kind of have to say, yikes, I can only maybe take
Oh
one of
yeah.
those or two of those, right? Like it's got to
Yeah.
be fairly involved, like you said, some of the
It
design.
is, yeah. So that's the hardest part of my job, I think, is probably saying no to stuff,
Right.
because I do get to work on so many really cool IPs that it's hard to be like, to choose between them a lot of the time because you have the managers for the different IPs contacting you, and you're like, there's only so much I can do in a day. You know what I mean? I used to like kill myself and like take on way too much work. I've kind of like chilled out a little
Right.
bit, but it's still really hard. Like, I'm rewatching Andor right now. And
Nice.
for like the last year, I haven't been on that many Star Wars projects because I've been
Hmm.
on, Dungeons and Dragons and like other IPs. And I'm like, I probably missed the cycle for the second season of Andor. And so I'm like pretty pissed off. I'm like, oh shit, I would have liked to
Gotcha.
have done another figure. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
absolutely.
oh man, like I probably
Yeah.
missed it. But it's like I can't really complain because I'm also super excited about, the Dungeons and Dragons stuff I'm doing. I'm super excited about like the Marvel projects and everything. So
Yeah.
it's hard,
So
but
absolutely. That's what I was gonna say. I mean, I would be, like, yeah, definitely I want to do all of them, right?
I know.
If
Yeah,
you could.
it's difficult.
Each IP has like a different manager, right?
Mhm.
Um, so they all contact you directly and say, hey, this is what's going on with my line.
Yep.
Not necessarily knowing that,
No, they're
that
pretty autonomous. They don't really know, like sometimes they'll talk, but they don't really know who's like working on what, you know what I
on
mean?
which one, right?
Mhm.
So Power Rangers doesn't know that Star Wars just called you, and
No,
GI
they
Joe is
don't. Not
about to
normal.
call you. Yeah.
There was one time where someone was like, "Are you sure you can take this on?" Like I just talked to someone else and they said you're doing this like
Oh,
crazy
really?
project and I was like, it was during COVID. I was like, I'm not really
Sure.
doing anything, so yeah, I'll be cool to like double up
Nice.
and not sleep for a couple weeks, you know.
Right. Sleep is
Yeah.
overrated anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I'll sleep when I'm dead, so
Yeah.
yeah.
That is very interesting because again, we see it from the other side, right? We see it as consumers, we see it as collectors,
Mhm.
and sometimes like, oh my god, like this GI Joe figure is really awesome. Like if they just change these two things, it could be a stormtrooper, right? Or
Sure,
it could
yeah.
be
Mhm.
like a villain for Power Rangers or something like that, right?
Mhm.
uh, so it's it explains a lot to know that these guys are sort of like little islands, right? Like they do,
Yeah.
obviously I'm sure they do share information. It's not like they don't talk to each other, but
Mhm.
it seems that each one of them has their own process, right? To a
Yeah.
certain point. Could you tell us, let's say what an average time for a full figure sculpt it looks like?
Ooh, lately it's been getting a little bit tighter, so that's been a challenge. But it really depends. Mostly I'd say it's about 2 to 3 weeks for the first, like, turnaround. So
Wow.
that would be,
Yeah.
like, for me to finish up everything and submit a first pass.
Wow.
And then we maybe have, like, a week or 2 for revisions depending on, like, how long it takes for the designers to get back to you with what they want or what feedback they have. Revisions generally don't take that long. They take, like, a day or 2, but usually
Okay.
it's, like, kind of within probably it's, like, really quick turnaround, so probably, like, within a month for most figures or
Wow,
less.
that's, I'll be honest with you, that's a lot faster than I thought it was.
It's yeah, it is
Um,
it is very fast.
yeah,
'Cause,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm assuming the whole process, right? That doesn't take more than a few months. Like by the time it's tooled and molds are made and all of that stuff.
That
Um,
part takes a long time, so I think
yeah.
that's why they generally like us to turn over sculpts pretty quickly because, most there's sculpts that I did 2 years ago that still aren't out, right? Like, and there's stuff that,
Yeah.
sometimes it's, like, pretty quick in terms of them just, like, showing pre-orders, right? Because
Okay.
the
Yeah.
it's not fully manufactured, so that's kind of a newer thing.
Sure.
I feel like showing pre-orders, like, so soon, because it was really rare before for that to happen. It was, like, pretty long time between
Right. Before
sculpting
they
and actually
actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
actually being able to show stuff, so that's
Wow.
been cool. It's been nicer that it's been a little bit faster, but there's still some
Right.
stuff that I'm like, "When is that coming out?" Like, I
I
was
was.
like, "I would like
Yeah.
it to come out."
Absolutely. So that's another thing I wanted to ask. Like, the order that you get to work on some of these
Mhm.
products, right, is by no means the order that they're actually released, out to the
Yeah.
pecs, right? Like you just mentioned, right? I'm sure that there are designs you're like, hey, I wrapped that up 2 years
Oh,
ago,
for
like.
sure. Yeah.
And it just never popped up.
Yeah, well, there's also concept stuff that we do that, like, is just never gonna be shown anywhere, right? Like, so that
Wow.
those are always really rough projects because not rough in terms of them being hard, but it's like they're usually pretty cool. And then that's like the coolest stuff that you never get to show because they're like
Right.
internal, concepts. Like someone's like maybe too like unfeasible, maybe to actually make for consumer or manufacturable. Like it would be too expensive or whatever.
Right.
So there's a lot of really cool projects that they're like, maybe we'll do this for Haslab, maybe not. I don't know if it's ever going to be shown. So unfortunately, some of my coolest work is like that, but
Oh man.
it sucks. But
Yeah.
yeah, what can you do?
Seems yeah, right. I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like it's not a waste by no means, right? But I'm sure there's some things that you're like, God, I wish
I know. You just
I
wish you
wish
could
people
show
could
it,
see
right?
it, or
Exactly. Yeah.
people could have it, in their hands or in their collections.
Yeah, for sure.
So you actually brought up a really cool project that you worked on regarding Haslab, right?
Mhm.
And it's actually one that I own. It's not here. I'm trying to get a better case for it. But you did some work on the project for the Star Wars Mandalorian, right?
Yeah, the Razor Crest.
Razor
Yeah.
Crest.
Mhm.
So, which is one of the best Haslabs out there, in my opinion. Again,
Yeah, it's very
it's
cool.
one that I backed personally.
Thank
Could
you.
you tell us a little bit, about that, about how that was, if it's any different, than your usual assignments in terms of the dynamic, maybe the timing.
So that one was really interesting. The timing was pretty normal. Like I'd say, like it was maybe like a week to do those bags, a week or two, I think. So it was a little bit faster, but there were a lot of them, right?
Right.
And the coolest part of that was actually getting to look at set photos. Like I get to
Nice.
obviously like pretty detailed turnarounds of the actors and their costumes and everything, so I can
Right.
make sure everything's really accurate with likenesses and costumes and stuff. But just seeing like super detailed set photos like that, it's like the set dressers for Star Wars put like absurd amounts of detail into everything that is like you're never going to actually see it on camera, but it's like there.
Exactly.
And so it was really cool to be able to like see the photos from that and like see like the the amount of like crazy artistry that's going into the sets that like you can't see those bags on camera like 90% of the time, but it's like there's
Right.
detail, like minute detail in like everything. So that was really cool. That's what I really liked about that project.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, and it came out, amazing. I mean,
Thank you.
it's one of the it's one of the most successful Star Wars Haslab, right? That there have been.
Yeah.
And again, it's just it's super impressive, all the amount of work that went into
Oh
it.
yeah. Well, the detail is like crazy accurate. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty like it's insane that they actually got that much detail in it. So yeah.
Wow.
Very cool.
You mentioned a little detail right now, but when you get set photos, of maybe something that people haven't seen yet.
Oh yeah, I
Uh,
get stuff spoiled for me all the time. That's what that sucks too. That's my other complaint about my job is like I'll have storylines like spoiled and stuff and be like, well, great, like
yeah, exactly,
or
right.
whatever. Like
Yeah,
sometimes, or sometimes I'll know about castings before they're announced or whatever.
wow,
Oh man.
So that's fun.
yeah,
Or
absolutely.
or people
Yeah.
who don't get cast. So there are times where I will sculpt people who don't end up being cast in the
No
role that
way,
is-
really.
Yeah, we do.
That
I
is
don't know if
very
I'm allowed to say that
interesting.
actually, but
Oh
yeah.
damn. Okay, well this
But for some stuff coming up for Star Wars, there were a couple people that I was asked to do like concept sculpts of because they were like thinking about hiring certain actors for the role. And then
Gotcha.
I was like,
Wow.
oh, that sculpt was really good. I wish they got hired.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I can't show that. That's another like concept
Wow.
thing I can't show, but
Yeah.
that was a fun project. But
So I got a question for you.
Mhm.
So you being a Star Wars fan, of course,
Mhm.
what was like? Okay, they reached out to you, of course. They asked you to design, Bo-Katan.
mhm.
Of course, at the time, she's basically like Boba Fett, and people don't know much about her.
Mhm.
Did you actually think that your figure that you design is going to be such a big role in Mandalorian?
So no, so what's interesting about that is another concept sculpt I did like a long time ago was before Mandalorian was even like a thing I think that people knew about was going to happen at all. And so they similar to the mall figure, they had me do like a concept for what Bo would look like as a realistic character. It was obviously not Katie Sackhoff at the time. It was another actor again that I used as reference for that.
Yeah.
But that project will never see the light of day, obviously, because
Yeah.
Katie Sackhoff is Bo. But no, I definitely didn't know. Like I think obviously the characters in the cartoons are really cool and everything, but it's no, I didn't know. And it's really cool what they've been able to do with them, right? And like put them in live action and everything. I think it's translated really well, surprisingly. So yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny.
Absolutely.
That's how I found you on social media.
Oh yeah.
Since I'm a big Katie Sackhoff fan and Star Wars
Oh
supporter
yeah.
and everything. And when I saw this and it showed that you actually designed it, that's how I ended up finding you on social media, and then
Oh,
of
cool.
course reaching out to you. But yeah, if it wasn't for this figure, for me being, I'm a big Katie Sackhoff fan,
Hmm.
so me finding this figure is like the biggest like thing for me,
That's
Star Wars
cool.
wise.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I found you, and it's so cool that you took the time to respond back to us to
Oh
actually
yeah. Well, thanks for
come on.
having me. Yeah, it's awesome. It's great. It's a good time.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
we
you
truly
got an awesome
appreciate it.
job. That's all I got to tell
Oh, thank you.
you.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. It's super interesting, to us. Again, just to get a glimpse of what happens, behind the scenes of
Totally.
stuff that we obviously love, right? Um, Probably in the same vein as sculpting somebody that didn't end up getting the role.
Hmm.
I'm assuming you get to sculpt things that maybe are scrapped or maybe shelved. Um,
Hmm.
let's say for example, oh, I sculpted, I don't know, Moff Gideon in armor for the first season of Mandalorian, and
Hmm.
then it didn't happen, but it kind of happened in season 3, right?
Hmm.
So I'm assuming there's probably a lot of projects that are kind of in a vault locked up somewhere.
Yeah, there are a couple. It doesn't happen that often anymore, but like right around Han Solo, a lot of those projects got canceled, which was unfortunate. I did some cool stuff for that, and I'm
Wow.
not sure why they decided ahead of time to like cut off a lot of that line or a lot of the products that were coming out from that movie, but a lot of those were pretty cool, and they'll never, probably never
Yeah.
be released. But
Wow, that's
yeah, so
interesting.
but yeah, not that often anymore. Like I feel like they have a better, maybe because Star Wars has been, producing so much content in general and Disney has. I think they have kind of a better grip now on what's going to do well and what's not. So it doesn't happen as often anymore, which
Right.
is good, but
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very interesting. So we could have gotten a lot more solo figures, guys.
Yep.
So
That's
with the
impressive.
announcements at the Star Wars celebration and the
Mhm.
new movies and shows coming out, do you see yourself possibly working on some of that stuff in the future?
Yes, I definitely want to get back to Star Wars. It's been great working on D&D, and it's like I do really like switching around IPs, but again, like I'm saying, like I feel like I missed out on Andor, and I'm kind of like itching to get back into Star Wars. So, because it has
Yeah.
been like it's normally I'm doing a lot of Star Wars projects, and this last year has been like probably the least amount I've done. So I'm kind of like
Wow.
feel like I need to get back on it.
Nice.
So I wanted to show one of the figures you did get to work on
Mhm.
for an Andor character, right?
Yeah.
Mon Mothma. And I wanted to ask you. You mentioned earlier about obviously getting the likeness of
Mhm.
the actors, right? For you to be able to sculpt. Do they basically just tell you, "Hey, this is this is Mon Mothma's head," and just insert it like into your figure? Do you get to do
No,
some of the retouching or slight modifications to them?
there are occasionally 3D scans for stuff, but for this,
Hmm.
there was no real 3D scan. So this was just all me sculpting
Wow.
based on
Really?
pictures. Yeah. And a lot of the stuff is like that. Like I think Han Solo was also there was no 3D scan for that, I believe. And it's
Wow.
actually I don't feel like there's been a lot of 3D scans recently. So
Really?
it's
Oh
mostly
man.
just been like we get like a ton of set photos, right? Like we
Sure.
get like super detailed turnarounds. So we don't really need them. I think that
Hmm.
happens a lot more on Marvel that they get like really full 3D scans. And we do get
Okay.
some. It does happen, but a lot of the time they're really not super great or super detailed. So it's very much like a kind of a block out. So we are
Wow.
doing most of the art most of the time, Yeah.
Well, I gotta tell you, that is impressive
Yeah,
because
it's freaking
Thank
this,
awesome.
you.
yeah, I mean, these figures look, right out of a picture, honestly,
Thanks.
and that is something that we as collectors have been noticing, and definitely an improvement on some of the, I would say on most of the human sculpts, right,
Mhm.
for Star Wars and other lines, of course. So yeah, that is super impressive that you
Yeah.
basically can take a bunch of pictures and come up with this,
Thank you.
which
Yeah, well, I
again,
mean,
look at them.
yeah, most of us are really the people who work for Hasbro, like, are kind of like a lot of us do a lot of likenesses, so I think it's, like, kind of, like, one of the things they look for when they're scouting people,
Makes
I
sense.
mean, it's, like, one of the most important parts is to be able to kinda do a likeness.
You've been working a lot more now with Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Mhm.
Um, so we showed a couple of the creatures that you've been working on. Have you worked on any of the human, sculpts for those? Um,
Yes, not for the movie, right?
okay. Hmm.
I haven't done any. I didn't do any of the characters for the movie, but coming up, there's some human stuff that I'm doing for D&D that's really
Nice.
cool that I'm very excited about.
Oh, nice.
Absolutely.
And there's other stuff too, obviously. So I'm really looking forward to those coming out.
Yeah.
Um,
Sweet.
yeah, D&D's been really great. It's been kind of a little bit more creative freedom than I get
Oh,
a lot
really?
of the time.
Okay.
Like, yeah, like Star Wars is amazing, obviously, to work on, right? But you're very much like you have to sculpt the likeness. You have to
Yes.
make sure every detail is perfect. So this has been a lot of fun to kind of, you know, have the design be more open and get to have a little bit more creative freedom with stuff.
That is very
Sweet.
cool. That's
Mhm.
good to know that that Hasbro is at least open, right, to some artistic input into their
Oh
into
yeah,
their
totally.
product.
Mhm.
That's very cool. That's good to know. And so, do you feel that that maybe plays off on IPs that they basically own or have more control on, right? I would assume that that's maybe where this little bit more degrees of freedom comes
A
from.
little bit, right? And a lot of those characters, there's no like there's not like an actor that you can be like, this
Correct.
is the likeness for that character, or this is like the exact outfit, right? A lot of the D&D stuff or a lot of the GI Joe stuff is the cartoons or it's illustrations, so it's more like open to interpretation that way, right? It's
Right.
so instead of like having a real person that you have to replicate exactly.
Yeah, that's very true.
Mhm.
That is very true. One last question, I guess, on the Hasbro, line,
Sure.
and you don't have to answer if you don't want to. But do you ever just go down and Target, see one of your figures, and you're like, ugh, like this is how they went with it, Or the other, part of that question, not that the design was bad or
Mhm.
that even the mold was bad, but maybe a little bit of overspray here and there with the paint, and you're like, oh man, like.
There are definitely things that are frustrating about making action figures, right?
Sure.
Like you can have super detailed and perfect things in ZBrush that don't necessarily manufacture the best for
Very true.
whatever reason,
That's actually
because
very true.
the scale and whatever and stuff just kind of happens sometimes. So yeah, there's times when I'm like, oh, that's a little rough. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But it's no one's fault. It's just the nature of making
yeah,
action
of the
figures. Like
production, right?
sometimes,
Like,
right?
and again, there are 1,001 steps that have to go right, before a product is finalized, and then there's probably like 10,000 more steps before it's produced correctly in every
For
way,
sure.
shape, or form, and make it
Hmm.
to the shelf, right?
Yeah.
In a good, presentation wise.
Yeah.
But
Mostly stuff comes out well,
yes.
but yeah, there's been times, I'm not gonna say which which ones, but there's some
That
that you're
is,
like, "Oh, man, I don't
yeah.
feel like that looked that bad in ZBrush. I don't know what
Yeah, right.
happened."
No, no, no. What happened? Hey, it was good when I turned it in, right?
I
Like,
don't know, man. It's like I stand behind my work. No, I'm just kidding.
absolutely,
So how does it
absolutely.
feel though, as growing up as a kid, like us? We're doing a show, but like me, I can't draw. I can't draw at all, but
Mhm.
I have great ideas. I've worked with a couple artists
Uh-huh.
who've done my ideas and put them on print, and it come out awesome.
That's cool.
But you, as an artist, seeing your stuff in the store, like how does it feel like when you walked into your first, like you said, Target, and you
Mhm.
saw your first actual line item in the store? How did it feel? Were you
It's
kind of
pretty
like
weird.
shocked or kind of like, wow?
It's a pretty weird feeling. It's very cool though, right? Like it's kind of hard to describe. I think the cooler thing for me is like when people will like be out somewhere themselves at Target and they'll like send me a picture and be like, "You did this. Oh my God." It's like it's just fun,
Absolutely.
that people think about it that way. So that's really cool. I still go into Target sometimes and I'll go into the toy aisle and be like, "Is anything I made out here right now?"
Very nice. Very cool.
So yeah,
That is
but it's
freaking
Yeah.
very
awesome.
cool. Sometimes if I'm feeling bad, I'll go on Amazon and I'll look at reviews for some of my figures, and people will be like, "Such great sculpt."
Yeah.
So that's always a good ego boost when you're feeling down.
Yeah, man. I
Nice.
mean, from the work that I've seen, again, the one that you've shared on Instagram, you're killing it, honestly.
Thank you.
And that is across multiple lines for Star Wars, which is obviously the one that I keep an eye out for. So you've done work, for the Black Series, the Vintage
Mhm.
Collection, the Retro Collection, Mission Fleet. So basically every line out there that Hasbro has, for Star Wars, you've done some work
Pretty
in it,
much, yeah.
right? You sculpted, right,
Mhm.
the Darth Maul for Mandalore Vintage
Mhm.
Collection. Again, one incredible job. Again,
Thank you.
he's right there. And
I have mine over there too. So
oh, awesome! And notice that there's a hole in my wall there. That's where he
oh, it's
sits
there.
normally.
Oh yeah,
So I just brought him in closer. Okay.
cool.
They're like, hey, you know what? We're also gonna do a black series of this guy, right?
Mhm.
So did they tell you, hey, can you just like make it bigger?
No, I actually didn't know they were gonna make that. I'm not even sure. I think they reused a lot of my figure for that, but I don't know. I didn't know that that was gonna happen. It was cool that it did. I think people
Wow.
wanted it to
Oh,
happen.
absolutely. Yeah.
But so I'm not sure who actually worked on uh resizing or doing whatever they needed to do. I think a lot of the time they kind of give jobs like that to like people who are newer just to teach them. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I don't do a lot of like I think the last figure that I like adjusted was Fennec Shand. That was like
Ooh.
like 2 or 3 years ago now, right?
Mhm.
Like I took her black series down to the vintage scale. And so I did a little
Wow.
bit of adjustments and cleanup for that. But that's not something I post, right? Because I didn't really do the original art for it. So
I hear you.
yeah, so a
Mhm.
lot of those projects, I think they kind of try to put on people who have been, working with the company for less time. So like people who are a little bit more like I guess senior level, like me, are doing more like full figures and stuff from scratch or whatever.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
Definitely. Yeah.
It's been a minute since I've actually been able to do personal work. I think
Yeah, I would assume.
the last thing I did was the goat man that's on my 3D Instagram, but
Okay.
That one's nice. I like the detail
oh,
on
I
that one.
actually thank you.
Yes.
I actually have here, let's see if I can I have it
Oh, no
printed right here.
way.
Oh,
So I just
That
got
is
this
awesome.
done. Thanks. Yeah. So that was really cool to get him like finally printed everything. I need to paint him now though. So I'm like trying to get
Yeah.
into like mini painting a little bit. And so I've had some of my own stuff printed so I can like if I ever get a second away from work to actually paint stuff, that would be really
Yeah,
cool.
right. Yeah. Yeah,
so
yeah.
question, like back in the day,
Mhm.
Hasbro back in the day, some of the actual creators who created the figures actually got to keep prototypes. Depending, of course, back then was different.
Yeah.
But do you get a prototype of the stuff that you work on, or
I
not
do
really?
not. It would be very cool if I did. Sometimes they'll send me pictures of prototypes, but that's very rare too. So like normally I don't get a lot of information after I finish something. So it
So,
would be cool, but they don't.
so also too, since you're a creator,
Oh,
have you
nice.
ever thought about doing conventions and like that focus on just toy figures?
I
Or you,
actually didn't even know there were conventions that were just for figures. That's pretty cool. I
Yeah.
know like Hasbro does their kind of own thing in like HasCon or whatever in Rhode Island.
yeah,
But yeah, I've never really thought about it. I'd probably be open to it. It sounds like a lot
cool.
of fun. But
Yeah,
yeah,
because yeah,
yeah, I do some conventions out here. Like I'll do like BlizzCon because I went to school
You've
for video
worked.
games. I'm a
Yeah.
big video game fan, and I
oh,
used to do a
nice.
lot of anime conventions when I was a teenage weeb. You know what I mean? So,
Nice. So can I ask what
uh,
your favorite anime is, or maybe current favorite anime?
of all time favorite anime is Cowboy Bebop for sure. Like you just
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
can't beat
that
the
animation.
classics. Yeah.
Yes.
Right now I'm watching Odd Taxi, which is really fun,
Nice. Yeah.
and I started Chainsaw Man, which is is
Hey,
interesting.
it's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I
Yeah.
don't know if I'm gonna
Absolutely.
finish it at this point, but it's
No, I hear
it's
you. I
something.
hear
Yeah.
you. I haven't caught up on that one. I think I watched the first three, and then I was like,
I
okay,
think
like,
that's around where I'm at right now, and I
yeah,
was like, I don't know about this, but
yeah, yeah. It's definitely
yeah,
different, I would say.
yeah, for sure.
So, troopers. Also, as we mentioned, Sarah Lynn has a personal art Instagram that you guys definitely need to check out. Okay, some of this stuff I honestly wish it was an action figure just so that I could buy
Thank you.
it and put it on my shelf. Okay. Um, we'll let me show you some of this stuff, but look at those designs. I mean,
Thank you.
amazing, amazing stuff. Those creatures, by the way, look incredible. Okay. Some of the
Thanks.
detail on these is very, very impressive.
Thank
Look
you.
at
Yeah, I
that.
have a lot of fun with these. It's not my professional work, so it's like I always feel like I'm kind of I'm definitely better at 3D, but it's always like pretty satisfying to, get there and paint and
Yeah.
kind of go back to 2D.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Mhm.
it looks great. I mean, I
Thank
love
you.
the colors on this one, the details, the veining, all of that stuff looks just
Thanks.
great. So yeah, once again, guys, the links will be in the description. All right, you need to go follow Sarah Lynn because she posts some awesome, awesome stuff. As you can see, I
Thank you.
love this one.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that was
This one
actually just
is
a study of a statue. So that was a lot of fun.
really,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, again, just the details. The of course, you being an artist, I'm butchering all of these terms, but
No, you're fine.
the use of the different shades of the shadow to give it the depth, right?
Yeah.
Of like in this particular case, the muscles, right, of on the well, a statue, but of the lion,
Mhm.
and details, of the different strands of hair, all of that stuff. To me, is super super impressive. Definitely,
Thank
guys,
you.
go check out her again. This is her personal art Instagram,
Mhm.
and some spooky stuff. So maybe not show it to your kids, but
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm a big horror fan, so a
no,
lot of my
hey,
personal stuff is very horror related. Oh yeah, and
so are
there's
we.
a
So
board
this.
game I made in school.
Oh,
Oh,
nice.
really?
Yeah, I've made I made another board game too for a company, but I did a little bit of design work. But this is
Oh,
very old.
wow.
This is from my sophomore year of college, so it's very old now, but
Damn.
it's a functional board game. It was a definitely a fun project.
Yeah, look at this.
So when did you
So,
get into art?
whoa.
Like, were you like in young as a kid started drawing, or what drew you
Yeah.
to drawing?
I don't I just have always drawn, right? Like it's just I think it's one of those classic artist things where it's like I've always been doing this. I my entire life I can't really tell when it started, you know. But it was just always something I've done.
So you said just doodle and
Oh
come up with
yeah,
stuff.
100 yeah, all the time. I used to, draw Sailor Moon fan art and stuff like that a lot
Awesome.
when I was a
Very
kid.
cool.
And I did when I was a teenager, I did when I was at anime conventions, I actually did booths at Artist Alley and I would sell, prints at that time. So
Oh,
that
for
was a
real?
lot of fun.
If you had your pick of, let's say, a character or maybe a
Hmm.
figure, right? Like you just mentioned, maybe Sailor Moon that you could actually sculpt a figure for, right?
Hmm.
Um, which one would you pick?
Oh my God. That's really rough. Like there's so many, right? Like I could I read a lot of books. So anything um like Brandon Sanderson related or like Joe Abercrombie or probably saying names you don't know, but fantasy authors, right? Like
Yes.
I would love to do work for fantasy authors or if we're
Very
talking
cool.
about anime related stuff or games, I'm a huge fan of a game called Doki Doki Literature Club. I would
Nice.
love to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
any of the characters from that. So it's a mix of stuff, but yeah, there's a lot of IPs I would like to work on for sure.
That's awesome.
I know it's not very
And
straightforward, but
no, no,
yeah.
Mhm.
it's. I mean, this and guys, this is from the person that's made Star Wars, GI Joe, Power Rangers. So, like I said, our list of what figures we would like to do, right, or get to work on
Sure.
is actually your resume. So that's
Oh
that's
yeah,
very
thank you.
cool.
Yeah.
So very cool. It seems that you are having a blast, first of all, with some
100%,
of the
yeah.
work. It sounds like Hasbro is an interesting company to work for, um,
Definitely.
that is keeping you busy.
Yeah, very busy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so
Yeah,
we can't wait to see more of your stuff on the shelf.
thank you.
um Hopefully they don't lock it into a vault anymore, like you said.
Most of it's not locked to do it's there's a lot of cool stuff that'll be coming out for sure.
Nice, that's good to know. That's
That's
definitely
freaking
good to
cool.
know.
Thanks.
Yeah, you probably, again, don't have that much time, but have you ever thought about going back to video games, and maybe doing more, or more specifically video game like related, work?
Yeah, I definitely have. It's something that I've thought about a lot. It's something I'll probably do for the future. Most like all of my friends work in games. Like I live right next to Blizzard, right? Like so I live
Nice.
like adjacent to of multiple major video game studios. So
Yeah.
like everybody in my social circle is, working on games. So I feel like it's
Wow.
eventually going to happen. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with my job right now. So action figures is good for me currently. But yeah,
Yeah,
maybe in the future.
So for kids,
absolutely.
for not for kids, well, yeah, kids in general, or an artist that's inspiring, what would
Mhm.
you recommend them to continue? Just if they were into doodling, drawing, and that's something they love,
Mm.
do you suggest that they continue to do that, go to school for it to get better, so that they can eventually do stuff like that, or how? What would you?
There's a lot of debates over whether art school is really worth it. I had a really great time, obviously, at art school, and Ringling was great for me for career placement. And a lot of the people I know have really great careers after going to a place like Ringling. I don't know if all art schools are like that. Um, So there's a lot of resources that people can get better just on their own without spending the absurd amounts of money to go to an art school. So it's kind of hard to say what the right path is, but I would just say go on YouTube and like figure out what you really want to learn. And there's so many resources just for free on YouTube that you can just dive into, and it's amazing, right? Like I wish that stuff was available when I was a teenager, because it's like it's crazy what kids now can do because they just have so much access to information. So I would say the biggest thing though is like really be sure about what you want to do, which is really hard. It's probably the hardest thing in art to like figure
Right.
out exactly what you want, but it is 100% better to like focus on one thing than like try to split your focus, right? Like, so
Yeah.
my last year of college, my program was more environment art focused actually. So, but I knew I didn't want to do that, right? Like I knew I wanted to do character. So I made sure that a lot of the work that I was doing personally was for that, right? So I would say the more you could focus, the better. Personally,
Nice.
yeah.
So yeah, like I said, that's one thing. I'm very big on the artist. So to me, I like to hear everybody's artist opinion. For people who love to draw, because like I said, I wish I could
Mhm.
draw. Because no, seriously, you artists can, like, when a comic book artist is given wording, like, okay, this is gonna be a splash page, you got to write it
Yeah.
out and create it. Same thing with you. They give you a set of instructions. They want you to do this,
Mhm.
and you kind of have to imagine it in your head and then put it on
Oh
paper
yeah.
or
Mhm.
computer. So that is that is talent that
Thank you.
that not anyone can
Yeah.
just get.
Yeah.
I don't. Sometimes you'll start a project and you like forget how to sculpt, and you're like, "How did I do this?" Every other time, I don't know. I feel like every artist like has a thing like that. Like that when you start a project, you're like, "I can't believe I've done this 100 other times. Like I've forgotten how to do everything," and then you like panic the entire time, and then somehow it turns out okay in the end. But yeah, I don't
That's
know.
awesome.
We
But
appreciate
yeah,
that. Like, thank you for letting up and
yeah,
coming artists. That's one thing I want people who watch these shows and we get artists on, so that as a kid, like you may help another kid later on that can be in your position 20 years from now.
That'd be super cool. Yeah.
So thank
absolutely.
you.
So there it is, troopers. Let me know what you guys think. This has been super fun. We thank you so much, Sarah, for being here, sharing, again, your experiences, sharing your talent with us. Because honestly, like I said, the people watching this, I can guarantee have something that you have worked on, in their collection.
That's super cool.
It is amazing, to hear from the artists themselves, and to make it better, you actually like this stuff, so that kind of thing, that kind of motivation shines through the work, right?
Thank you.
So thank you so much for talking to us here today.
Thanks for
uh
having me.
no, you are welcome anytime. We'll hit you up once we
Sure.
start seeing some of that, new Star Wars projects coming
Yeah,
in.
maybe in like 2
uh
years.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I'm sure there's gonna be quite a lot more that we're gonna be
Mhm.
seeing on pegs from you, right? So
Yeah, I'm itching to get back to it for sure.
yeah, absolutely. And I know that there's already stuff that you can't talk about, but
Mhm.
that's already in the works. So hopefully we see those again pretty soon. But once again, thank you so much for taking the time. We really truly appreciate you guys. Definitely go check out Sarah Lynn, basically at any link that I leave in the description below. All right, go follow her. She does amazing stuff. We just gave you a small sampling, okay, of what she posts and of what actual work that she's done. Thank you again, Sarah, and like I said, you're welcome anytime.
Thank you so
We
much.
appreciate it. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
This is the way.
I'm gonna go watch the Mandalorian now. After
Oh,
watching the
there you go.
episode, the
Yes,
finale.
the finale. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
catch up.
rocking the hat.
Awesome. Very cool.
Well,
See you
thank
guys
you
later.
again.